I've talked to a nonprofit before who told me we have this massive spreadsheet and we just have to go in every week and just look line by line and make sure we're not missing anything, we're putting any fires out. Internally at an organization, there has to be an expectation of we need to put this information in the grant system, and almost the idea of, well, if you don't add it and log it in the system, it didn't happen.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Grant the Mic. We are talking today about grant management tools that actually work. So today we're going to explore some of the best tools and systems for managing grants effectively. We're also going to talk about how to streamline your workflows for tracking deadlines, reports, and compliance. We're going to look at GrantFrog and any other grant management platforms that we can think of, and talk about how to choose the different software that fits your organization's size and budget. So with us is Hannah. And Hannah, can you tell us just a little bit about your background and what inspired you to create GrantFrog?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Allison. I'm excited to be here. I'm Hannah Wiginton, and I'm the founder and CEO of GrantFrog. And we're a grants management software that helps you find and track your grants for your nonprofit organization, consulting agency, or other type of agency. I'm excited to be here. I've spent 15 years in the nonprofit field and have been a grants director for just as long. And GrantFrog is really the processes that I've used over the years as a grants director to manage a grants program, and finally decided, hey, you know what? I can help other people with this. And that's really where GrantFrog came about.
I really love when we take systems that we've been using for all of the years and are like, there's got to be a way to make this reach across the world to help other people do great things. So I love that you were brave enough to create a system and share it with the world around you. So what are some common struggles that you see organizations face when managing grants manually?
Yeah. So a lot of times what we see is, when you start to get into managing grants and you start going out and looking for funders and foundations and start finding these grants, you'll start tracking them maybe in a notebook, or maybe even you'll go to a spreadsheet. And what happens is it's really a struggle to keep up with all of those deadlines. Just year over year, you have to write out the grant applications, you have to keep up with the cycles, you have to keep up with your grant reports after you get those grants as well. And what happens is it's just hard to keep track of that over time, and you run into missed deadlines, or maybe there's a funder that you didn't realize that you needed to do outreach for. And so you struggle with that. And so what we try to do at GrantFrog is to help you manage that process. You get notifications and reminders of your deadlines and finding new grants as well. And so it just helps in the aspect when the grant writers and the nonprofits really struggle with that kind of thing.
So when we're looking at using tools like GrantFrog, a lot of nonprofits have to leverage what the cost is, what the ROI is, and things like that. So how can smaller nonprofits evaluate these different options without getting overwhelmed by the amazing features?
Yeah, absolutely. What I usually say is, if you're managing, one or two grants, and, that's pretty reasonable and maybe easy to manage on a spreadsheet. And so if you're doing that, I wouldn't say you need a system right away to start tracking all of that. Where you really want to think about the things that you need in a system are, okay, we're managing now 5+ grants and the grant reports on top of that, and then also our list of foundations and funders. And how are we tracking all that? Where, as an organization, can maybe the executive director and the grant writer all come together in one place? And so when you're thinking about all these different pieces of what's best for us, is you'll start with saying, okay, we're now doing this many, and we want to make sure that as an organization we can continue to grow and we know what's happening. And I think that's important to think about in the place that you are.
Yeah, and I know that with our internal team, we don't use systems like GrantFrog because we don't use grants management type software, mainly because we manage multiple organizations, and so we're managing our own internal processes, right? And so for us, occasionally we'll have, like, we use Asana right now, and we had a salesperson from Monday reached out, and then a salesperson from Airtable reached out. And, it's really, really easy to think my system's not good enough right now because all of these other people are doing bigger and better things and they've got the bells and whistles. But do you know of any, or can you list out some of the red flags or common mistakes that individuals make with software selection?
Yeah, I would say that, there's a lot of solutions out there, and there's a lot of good solutions and some that aren't as great as well. I think what is really important in deciding, number one, do you need a grants management system, or are you just doing a couple of year, like I said? So, if someone's trying to oversell you on something like that, well, you only have two and they're small foundation grants, you may not necessarily need something right away. So I think that's something to take into account as well. Um, Probably some other things too are, do you want to maintain something yourself and build something yourself? Because when you're looking at a lot of these systems out there, they are some of them more generic and not made specifically for grants and for what a nonprofit needs or what a consultant needs. And so I think you need to ask the question, okay, is this something that I, as an organization, and probably someone who wears many hats at an organization with no time to do much else, is it something that you're going to have to build out yourself and maintain yourself? So I think that's something to ask. And then also another thing is really how great of customer support and service they have, because there's a lot of solutions out there, and I think you need to ask, who's going to be able to support me and our organization in finding grants and funds, not only just the grants themselves, but someone who understands development and nonprofits as well, and what that looks like from inside of there. And I think that's something to keep in mind too, just someone dedicated to how they can help you in your organization and be successful.
And I'm going to add to that because while you're talking, it made me think of something my husband told me. He was like, Allison, you need to put down what your pain points are. And
Hmm.
so, what do you have a perceived problem that you're looking for a solution for? Or are you looking for a solution that you don't even have a problem for yet? So, write down your pain points.
Yeah.
Is tracking in Google Sheets or Google Calendar not working for you? Tell me why. So then when you talk to software organizations and companies, that you can say, okay, these are my issues. How does your platform meet those needs? And so you're not stuck falling into the trap of the next biggest, greatest, prettiest thing.
Hmm.
Because man, it's beautiful when something else can spit out a report for you, right? And you're like, oh, that's so pretty and I don't have to worry about it. But if that's really not a problem for you and it's just a value add, then maybe that's not where you need to spend your money.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes too, it comes down to a time constraint as well, and how much time you have or how much time you feel like you're wasting on something that is maybe just not a fit for how you work.
So what would you say is the biggest difference between using a spreadsheet or using a dedicated platform?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest differences is that when you use a spreadsheet, a lot of times the way that it works is you have your list of grants, you have your list of foundations, and they're all in this same spreadsheet. And where it gets real tricky is that you've done it for this year, but then you need to do it again next year. But at the same time, it's hard to keep track of, well, when did we last apply to this foundation? Maybe you're 3 to 4 years in by this point, and you're having to search, you're having to look all this up. Well, the difference between that and a dedicated system is that you have all that on one page. So you go to that funder page in a grant system like GrantFrog, and you can see immediately, oh, we've applied for grants over the last 3 years. And so we know the due dates, we know what we've received for them. And it's just a lot less overwhelming to have to dig through a lot of this. Another thing I would say is really keeping track of those due dates. You can do that in a spreadsheet all day long, and people have done it for a long time. But what happens is then you have just this deadline here, this deadline here, this one down here, and it's hard to keep track. I've talked to a nonprofit before who told me, well, we have this massive spreadsheet where they were a very big nonprofit. They said we have this massive spreadsheet and we just have to go in every week and just look line by line and make sure we're not missing anything, we're putting any fires out. And this is a longtime experienced grant writer in a large organization, and she still feels every time I get in here, I'm just trying to figure out, which way to look. And
Right.
so, yeah. So the difference in that and a grant system is just the fact that you don't feel as overwhelmed. You have a handle on your deadlines a little better.
So, talking about having a handle on your deadlines a little bit better, with a system like GrantFrog, could an organization customize it to fit their processes? Or is it, I know it's going to depend on each software, but let's just talk about yours because that's what you know, right? So, let's talk about GrantFrog. Can they customize the processes to fit how their organization runs?
In some ways, you can. We have some custom field options. But a lot of it is also based on experience of not only my experience being in a nonprofit and as a grants director for many years and what I've done, but also the experience of the customers and users that we've had over time. And so not it started even one way and it's evolved into something that's just even more useful for nonprofits and agencies. And it continues to evolve. So there's some customization options, but some of it is also, hey, here are best practices that we see out there for nonprofits or agencies, and here's how we think that this is the best way to do these processes as well. And so it's a bit of also not only helping with your grant system, but helping you as well in using these best practices.
Yeah. So, I always hear this, and I'm sure you've heard it too. Good data in equals good data out. Bad data in equals bad data out,
Yeah.
right? So your tool that you use is only going to be as good as the information that you put in. So,
Mhm.
talk to me about some of the best practices on onboarding staff or new staff, current staff into using a system like GrantFrog, so you're able to, so each staff person is able to pick it up wherever someone left off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another great reason, just in general, for having a grant system is because you can work together with your team or new staff members who come in and they can immediately jump in and see, oh, okay, here are all of our grants and really understand that from the get go. Now, as far as the training and things, I do absolutely agree with you on the data. I think that internally at an organization, there has to be an expectation of we need to put this information in the grant system, and almost the idea of, well, if you don't add it and log it in the system, it didn't happen. So, what's most important to you? And, do you want to show that you have submitted this grant proposal? Well, you need to put it in the system so that it happened. And it's really important to do that.
Yeah, that makes me laugh because I just had this conversation with another training group that we were doing work with, and this nonprofit was like, you know, the spreadsheet that we use, it's literally the way someone's brain worked 5 years ago. And that person doesn't work here anymore. And it makes no sense to anyone else who is here. And so we just keep putting information in. And I don't think
Oh,
we're
no.
getting anything positive out of it. And so we had this big long conversation of like, it's really okay if you need to take that, archive it, and make what
Yeah.
works, or you need to go look for a software. But
Hmm.
having kind of set standards of what information is important to you to collect as an
Hmm.
organization is important, because sometimes we can over collect information, right? We can
Hmm.
add in all of the things, and then your spreadsheets or your information that you put into the software gets so disjointed because everyone's doing it differently that it's not true data of what you really want. It's everyone's just like, well, I think this is important, so I'm going to put 100,000 things in here
Yeah.
because I don't want to be accused of not putting anything in. So
Hmm.
I don't know if GrantFrog does this on your side of it, but I think as an organization, having internal policies and processes, once you agree either to use a spreadsheet or any other software system out there of what do we deem as important? How do we
Hmm.
know that? How many days between things do you have to put stuff in? Creating those processes is so important. And that is what's going to help with the onboarding and making it a user friendly system across your organization. It's not really the software that ever is not user friendly, it's how the organization itself views it as, is this an important tool for us to do our jobs well?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, something that we do as well, even, with new customers, we do data migrations and imports. So, you have your current stuff, how you've already been tracking it, and we do the migration and the import so that, you're not starting from a blank slate. Now, one thing that I find very important to do is I don't want to put in your spreadsheet that is, not ready to go. Like I'm not going to import information that once you get it into the system, you still feel overwhelmed by looking at it. And
Right.
so what we do is we go through and we help and we say, okay, so let's talk about your programs that your grant funds are going to that they're tracking right here. Let's make all of these the same. We want them to all look the same so that from here on out exactly what this is. There's not this messy data. And so I think that's another thing that nonprofits need to keep in mind. If you do have a crazy messy spreadsheet right now, it's not the end of the world. But we'll clean it up. But at the same time, going forward, there needs to be some standard procedures and best practices and what you want to do going forward to keep it organized and ready to go.
So, what role does having really good data in a system like yours play at improving future proposals and compliance long term?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important because the last thing that you want to do is not send over a grant report by the due dates. That is, it's not the end of the world in some cases. So it happens, but you want to set yourself up for success for the next grant cycle and the next year, and also just making a positive impression with that funder in that you have done what you said you were going to do. You reported on the information, you've submitted the budget and things like that. And so when you have a system that helps you able to look back and say, okay, here's what we asked for. Are we doing what we said that we were going to spend the money on? And then going forward, making sure that we're stewarding the funder, that we're stewarding the grant, and we're able to continue receiving funding, hopefully, in the future from them.
Yeah. So, how important is it for a software to integrate with your finance software or your CRM systems?
Yeah, I think it really depends on your situation. I have talked to many nonprofits over the years. And it's interesting that Some organizations, their grants department will track the finances on their grants and the spend down and that sort of thing. And then others, their finance department only will track it. And so a lot of times it depends on the situation of the organization in general. I do think that it can be helpful over time to do some of those things, especially with your donor management system. These are some of the things we're looking at in GrantFrog to work with, but Razor's Edge or Bloomerang or Neon, some of those CRMs that are used for your donor management, you want to be able to also track your funders and make sure you have that as well.
Yeah. So, why don't you take some time and tell us all of the things about GrantFrog, what it is, what it looks like, who the ideal size of organization is. So tell us just a little bit about it, and then we'll pick up with some questions after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think several ways that you can use GrantFrog. So GrantFrog, we have a way to find foundations and grants. You can research. We pull everything directly from the IRS. So as far as funding from corporate, private, and community foundations, you can research all their information, see their grants. You can do a reverse search even on nonprofits that are like yours. And
Favorite searches today.
yes, I know. So here's a key tip. If you're out there and you're looking for funding, look for nonprofits who do similar things to you, because if a funder has funded that nonprofit before, there's a likelihood that that's something they believe in and that they want to support. So that's really a fun way to find new foundations as well. So you can see all the information, you can save it into your GrantFrog account. And then from there, you can also track your grant deadlines, all of that really important information. You get email reminders for it as well. You can have multiple users and collaborate with your team. We're really great for nonprofit organizations. We work with some educational organizations as well, and also grant consulting agencies. So there's several things that we've really tried to make it useful for and try to help these organizations in their grants process and in their grants program and what's most useful. And it's been a lot of fun just being able to learn more and do that sort of thing and really be a vital part of their organization.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, when you were developing GrantFrog, or even just before you said, let me develop this great program, what were some of your must have features for a system like yours?
Yeah, I think probably one, I mean, some of the main things were just the fact that I needed to be able to quickly find a list of all my grants related to any foundation. So at any time, what had I submitted before to this foundation, and just that important history that everyone can have access to. Being able to track deadlines was a big one, because if you aren't on top of your deadlines as a grant writer, if you're not organized, those things can quickly just fly by and you don't even realize that you missed it. And I think just the deadline and due date tracking is really important in a system. Also, just being able to take the notes and have that history, and what programs am I asking for, what amounts am I asking for, how much, and those sorts of things were really key for me as a grants director, that I needed to make sure that I always had top of mind. I would add one more, and that would be being able to quickly report to leadership, um,
Yeah.
because you need to quickly be able to say, here's what I'm working on, here's what I've submitted, here's what I have upcoming, and here's what we have received in grants this fiscal year. So being able to quickly share that with the executive director or the CEO or the development director is key in a grant system.
Okay, so we know technology is changing. I swear it changes like every 30 minutes. So, how do you make sure that you're on top of all of the emerging trends and things in our space?
Yeah. So, as a nonprofit organization, Number one, I always like to say, as someone myself who is very technology minded and very much tries to stay in the know and uses the latest and greatest, I would say, first off, don't get overwhelmed by everything that's out there right now, because I think sometimes when you see all these new things and everything that's going on, it sometimes can get a little overwhelming and you feel like you're behind maybe. But I just want to tell you that number one, when you're thinking about that, it's important to have a good relationship with the funders and to do what you said you were going to do. And I think that is key, first off. Now, when it comes to other things and trends, I absolutely would be keying in on some of the great grant podcasts. Number one, like Boyd podcast. This is a great one. There's several federal ones out there that really they stay on top of what's going on in the federal world as well, following some really educational voices in on LinkedIn of these grant pros and grant agencies, and also some of the media as well. They do a good job of sharing what's going on in philanthropy as well.
So, you're actually one of my favorites to follow on LinkedIn just
Oh,
because I
thank
like your
you.
LinkedIn content. It's a lot of fun. And I view LinkedIn differently than I think a lot of nonprofit organizations as a whole do. I look at who are the leaders in our field, who knows the things going on, maybe in a sect of our field that I don't know. And so I
Yeah,
like to follow the different voices like that. But I also have a tendency to lean towards those who are glass half full
yeah,
opinions, and you're
hmm,
not like the alarmist of the group and stuff.
yeah,
And so I love y'all need to follow Hannah on LinkedIn. Um, because it's just really good content and it's good information, honest information. You're not going to get led astray. But anyway,
thank you.
I've enjoyed following you in that platform and seeing what you've done and all of those things. So that would be my call out to you. And I found that
Appreciate that.
staying on top with technology is hard, but it's only as hard as you make it, right? So I
Hmm.
wouldn't try to look at all of the pieces of technology, right? Find
Yeah,
what you know, learn that well, and become fluent in that. And then when there are pieces that you need to integrate into the work that you're doing, then learn that piece too. So it's kind of get your core down and then add in anything else. I was actually looking into, have you heard of Coursive? It's
mm,
15-minute micro learning sessions a
I
day.
have not. That's
Yeah.
neat.
And so I was like, huh, the entrepreneur that I am started thinking, well, how do we do that
Uh-huh.
for professionals? So to be determined. But the idea behind that is it's 15 minutes of learning time around some new
Yeah,
technology piece. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So, all that to say, there are different ways that you can stay on top of it, but really staying in your space and really technology is important. But you are absolutely right. The relationship with the funders is more important than any technology piece that we're going to bring to the work that we do.
yeah. That's great advice on learning. Just lean in, don't get overwhelmed, and learn what you can.
So, what is one piece of advice that you have for organizations wanting to upgrade their grant management systems?
I would say, figure out where you are. Do some research. There's several options out there. GrantFrog's not the only one, though. I'm obviously biased, so I would tell you to go look at us. But go look for one that number one can help you do track those deadlines that's within budget of what your organization there's they're all across various budget levels as well, and find one who will is ready to help you succeed and get started as well. And I think that's really important to look at.
So, speaking of GrantFrog, where can listeners find out more about you and how to access the software and tell us kind of the process of signing up?
Yeah, absolutely. So grantfrog.com, you can go check it out. It kind of tells you a little bit more about it. You can start a free trial. We have a 14-day free trial. Also glad to book a demo with you and go over it and really a lot of times what I do is I ask more questions about the organization because a lot of times there's a lot of different moving pieces and it's hard to really know everything that you need versus what the software has. And so it's always good to ask those questions as well. So book a demo and check that out as well. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, like Allison said. I also have a CTO and co-founder, Chris, and he does a great job of helping build this app and make it better. And we're just excited to be able to do this and help organizations.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us about grant management tools and how to use them effectively and embed them into your organization. We will put the link to GrantFrog in the show notes. So if you're listening and you're like, but I really don't remember how to get there, just go to the show notes, read them. We'll link back to GrantFrog, and then y'all can get started with a free trial or reaching out to Hannah and getting on her demo list. So we are excited to have you on Grant the Mic, and I'm thankful for you coming alongside us on this new adventure while we come alongside you on yours. And so I can't wait to see how great GrantFrog is, but thank you for sharing your passion for grant management systems and just supporting nonprofits in the work that they do.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And this has been a lot of fun.
All right. Well, next week we will talk about other fun nonprofit topics around grants and meet with some other friends. So I hope you join us then. But until then, thanks for joining us on Grant the Mic.